Hello from Houston, Texas. This is Catherine Wintz, and today you are watching Art, Food, and Real Estate. We are talking about zip codes, and today's zip code is 77008. So 008, that's the Heights. The Heights is a beautiful neighborhood. It's really close to downtown Houston. And if you will allow me, I'm going to go back all the way back. I'm going to go back to 1900. Why? Well, because the Heights was one of the very first neighborhoods to basically come to life in Houston. That was the very first planned community that was created. And it was created in 1891. In 1900, two things happened to the Houston area that had a huge impact. The first one is the oil boom. Oil was discovered in the Round Top area. So Round Top is about an hour away from Houston. So for our purposes, we'll still consider that the Houston area. And lots of oil was discovered. Lots and lots and lots of oil was discovered. And Houston has always had, at least since 1900, a love and hate relationship with oil. Mostly love. But, it very much based on oil for a very, very long time. The other thing that happened in 1900 is that a horrible hurricane basically almost destroyed Galveston. So the reason why that's important as far as Houston is concerned is because up to that point, Houston was doing okay. But really the big hub for banking and business was Galveston. Galveston was doing very, very well. It was an extremely busy port. Well, it got destroyed, so all the banking and all the shipping and all the industry that was there basically moved up about 50 miles up the road to Houston. And it took a while to rebuild Galveston. So what happened is that a lot of that business basically stayed in Houston, and Houston, of course, benefited from it. So that's the reason why 1900 is such an important year for us. So as I mentioned, 1891 is when the Heights was started, and it was a city until 1918, where it got annexed by Houston. One of the reasons for that is that the city of Heights needed more money, more funding for their schools. So the only way to do that is to be annexed by Houston, so that's what happened. What it did do, though, which I think is interesting, is that they kept their dry status. A very large part of the Heights was dry. A very large part of the Heights stayed dry for over 100 years. It was established in 1912, which is a full 8 years before the Prohibition started. And it was only repealed in 2018. So, I don't know, that's kind of unique. As far as the elevation of the Heights, the locals talk about the Heights as the highest point that we have in the city. Well, up to about 2 days ago, when I actually looked up a topographic map of the city of Houston, I thought that was the case as well. But if the topographic map that I was looking at is correct, then really on average, the Heights is like 60, 65 feet above water level. And frankly, that's the case of most of Houston. So I hope I am not crushing that thing for some of you here, but you may want to double check it. So this show is about art, food, and real estate in the Heights today. Art. Well, a lot of people think of the Heights as the Greenwich of Houston or the Soho of Houston. I mean, we have this quality of living there that's a little bit different. Definitely has an individuality to it. It's got plenty of art. It's got a lot of really cool shops that sell all kinds of little antique stuff. Well, that's not really artsy, but it could be. But what it does have, it's got an opera house So on Heights Boulevard, there is an opera house in the Lambert building. It's at the 1700 block of Heights. And, well, if you are a fan of opera, you have two options. You can go to HGO, which is the Houston Grand Opera, or you can go to Lambert Hall on Heights Boulevard. The big difference there is that Lambert Hall has 220 seats. So you're going to have a more intimate relationship with whatever's happening on stage, right? So that's kind of nice. There's also the Heights Theater. Now, the Heights Theater has a lot of history. I won't, tell you all of it, but I was doing a little bit of research on that. And the Heights Theater is also on 19th Street, and it's a venue for concerts and, different types of gathering. It's an older building, like about maybe 80, 100 years old, something like that. I was reading an article, and the article was The Heights Theater, 97 years of perseverance in a demolition-happy city. Well, and that got me thinking that a little bit less now, but I remember when I first came to Houston in the 80s, that was very much the buzzword. The buzzword was, gosh, we need to stop tearing down all those buildings. I mean, we are tearing down our history, we're tearing down our architectural heritage. So in the maybe early 90s, there was definitely a movement that was taking place and being widely accepted of let's stop tearing down stuff without thinking, right? So the good news is we're better at it. The not so good news is that we really tore down so many cool buildings, but it is what it is. So the oldest property you're going to find in Houston in terms of residential is probably a little bungalow in the Heights that was built maybe in 1880 or 1885, but you have to look hard because those are difficult to find these days. Now, just to give you a little bit of perspective, in Europe, I can't help myself. I'm French, after all. I have to put some European stuff in this. We're looking at 300-year-old building. We're looking at 400-year-old building, and we're not thinking twice, right? I mean, we take them for granted, but in a different way as well. We have an appreciation for architectural history that, unfortunately, is not always there here, but that's okay. So another thing that's cool about the Heights in terms of arts and opportunities to spend a nice evening doing something fun, there is this cute, quaint little movie theater. It's called 14 Pews. And 14 Pews, the building was a church, and then it became an art space. And now it is a movie theater. It's what they call a micro cinema. So you need to look that up, 14 Pews. All I can think about when I'm thinking about 14 Pews, and I did see the pictures of the inside, I have not gone yet, but I've heard so many good things about it, is that how uncomfortable can it be to sit on a wooden chair for 2 hours to watch a movie? I don't know. Hopefully I'm wrong on this, but this is a very, very cool little venue. It's on Aurora in the Heights. All right, now let's talk about food. So, because, if you recall, Heights was dry for 100 plus years, the bar scene was not the greatest. It has since then made up for lost time. There are some incredible bars in the Heights. There are some incredible restaurants. And I will give you just 4 that stick out in my mind. The first one is the Dish Society. So this is a restaurant that's at the corner of Yale and 11th. And let me tell you what's amazing there, because I have to tell you what I like over there on the menu, right? The brisket stuffed sweet potato that is topped with cabbage slaw. Okay, that's a mouthful. It really is a mouthful. It's amazing. It's a huge amount of food too, and it's extremely flavorful, and you can make 2 or 3 meals out of this thing. It's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. Then there is Alice Blue. Alice Blue on the 19th. What I like about Alice Blue is that they make the quiche as it should be made, says the French woman. And no quiche. And let me tell you, I've tried a bunch of quiches, and the quiche at Alice Blue is by far the one I like best. So for what that's worth. And then you cannot talk about the Heights without talking about Common Bond. We were just talking about this morning. Common Bond is amazing. I mean, in terms of bakery and pastry shop, it's absolutely amazing. So at Common Bond, this is what you need to get. Pay attention. You need to get the Queen Amman. The Queen Amman. You can't pronounce it, you can't write it, but you have to try it. It's absolutely amazing. It comes all the way from France, from Brittany. This is a Brittany top pastry. It is unbelievable. It's so good. Last but not least, a cheese place. So there is a cheese place on Airline. And by the way, Airline is actually 009, which is another Heights zip code. It's called the Houston Dairy Maids. So what's neat about that place is that they have over 150 different kind of cheeses, and they're all from Texas. That's kind of cool. What I like about them is that besides the fact that they have really good cheeses, when you go there before you go to a friend's for a party and you pick 3 or 4 cheeses, they are going to wrap those up like they are, I don't know, jewels, right? I mean, it's beautiful, the job that they do with the little packaging, and they put a little ribbon on each one. So when you bring this to your friend's house, it actually looks like, wow, look at that, before it's even open. So this is kind of nice. So now what I would like to do, besides the fact that I wonder why my nose is itching so much, I'm going to talk about cheeses. I'm going to talk about cheeses before I get to the real estate part. Okay. So here I am 2 days ago, and I'm in the kitchen, and my son says, Mom, do we still have some Brie? I said, yeah. I mean, we have Brie most of the time, right? He said, oh, okay. Can you just take off the wax off it? Now, my son should know better because his mother is French, than telling me something silly like that about cheese, right? I say, wax? There's no wax on Brie, honey. He said, yeah, no, there's wax on Brie. Anyway, so we had this very complicated conversation. So I had to look up on the internet what this rind, the white rind, is made of. And it kind of, in a way, I wish I had not, because this is one of the situations where you have more information that you can actually handle. But anyway, there it is. So the rind on Brie is actually what they call a bloomy rind. And the reason why they call that a bloomy rind is because they spray the soft cheese with layer after layer of basically a fungus, right? Now, you know that cheese and fungus, it's kind of, they go together, right? But again, how much information do you want to have about that? So basically what they do is that they spray it, they pat it down, they spray it again, they pat it down, and this is how they create that white rind on top of the Brie. So, am I happy that I know this? Not necessarily. Am I going to stop eating Brie? Of course not. And by the way, for your information, the best Brie is the 60%, the triple cream Brie. That's the one you want to buy. So Charles de Gaulle, who was our president, he was a semi-war hero anyway, so he was a big, big guy in French history. Charles de Gaulle is known to have said, how can you govern a country that's got 265 cheeses? Well, what he apparently didn't know is that France has way more cheeses than 265. We have like over 1,000 different kinds of cheeses. So I thought I knew about cheese, but apparently I wasn't very clear as to what that white rind on the Brie was. So best thing for me as a snack is a piece of bread, a piece of cheese, and either a glass of wine or coffee. All right, well, all this talk about cheese makes me thirsty, so bear with me for a second. Not bad. Okay, so now let's talk about real estate. So, real estate in the Heights. Well, the typical buyer who's going to be looking at the Heights, and again, you're thinking, typical buyer, what is that? And you are correct, but run with me on that one. So, the typical buyer looking in the Heights will be looking for a bungalow because there is another neighborhood in town called Montrose where you can still find bungalows. And bungalow, cottages, bungalows, tiny little houses, front porch, 1 story, 1,200 square feet average bungalow, right? So bungalows, Heights is still where you can find the most bungalows. Unfortunately, they are no longer $250,000, depending on where they are, depending on whether they were restored versus remodeled versus added to, and of course, depending on the quality of the work that was done. A bungalow can be $450,000. A bungalow can be $900,000. Still the same square footage, right? 1,200. Okay, so let's talk about restored versus remodeled because that's a huge difference. A bungalow that's been restored very, very well, will cost maybe twice as much as a regular bungalow that obviously has just been, updated a little bit. They slapped some granite in the kitchen and they put a new commode in the bathroom and it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath. It's 1,100 square feet. I have seen bungalows in the Heights that were amazingly redone. I mean, it's like you want to stay there for 2 hours just to take it all in. It's so beautiful. And those can go for lots of money. Like, I've seen some that were on the market for $900,000 and they were 12, 13, 1,400 square feet. Also, quite a bit of the bungalows have garage apartments, and that actually is a big deal in the Heights because this is one of those few neighborhoods still in Houston where you can find homes that have garage apartments because, of course, garage apartments, it opens up all kinds of possibilities, right? There are also some townhomes in the Heights, in the Shady Acres area, so you'd be looking at the northwestmost part of the Heights. I haven't talked about the boundaries of the Heights, but basically you're looking at 610 to the north, 45 to the east, I-10 to the south. So it's kind of interesting. It's literally bordered by freeways, right? And on the left, on the west, there is part of the Heights that's west of Durham, but most of the Heights is basically between Shepherd and 45. Okay, so it's kind of a big square, if you would. So you can find townhomes there. You can find bungalows. You can also find huge houses built on double lots, And speaking of lots, so the average lot in Houston is 5,000 square feet. So it's 50 by 100. That's average subdivision lot. Now, obviously, if you can get more than that, yay. But in the Heights, it's not uncommon to find a 3,000 square foot lot or a 4,000 square foot lot, and even sometime a 2,500 square foot lot or 2,200. Anyway, and you still have a house on those, right? Well, it's because it was platted differently, obviously, for starters. So that's definitely something to look for. Columbia, Harvard, Oxford, those are names of what we call the university streets. They run north-south. They are beautiful streets. They typically have probably some of the nicest homes. Heights Boulevard, which kind of is in the middle of the Heights. It's a gorgeous boulevard with an esplanade that has been used as an art display area for a long time now, and they, of course, rotate. So at any given time, you'll be driving up and down Heights Boulevard, and you can see some sculptures on the esplanade, so it's kind of cool. Homes are selling, as I mentioned, probably around 400 and up, and they can go to the mill easily. If you're looking at a gorgeous, fairly recent construction that was built in the Victorian style for the most part on a double lot, you'll be looking at $2 million, without a doubt. So again, the difference, the distinction between restored versus remodel is super important. What you will find in the Heights, which is kind of interesting, is that there are 3 historic parts in the Heights. There's Houston Heights West, Houston Heights East, and then South. And within those historic parts, you cannot do whatever you want to the home. You have to go according to, certain rules. So what a lot of people have done is that they take the bungalow and they're not allowed to change the way the bungalow looks like from the outside, so they build in the back. So you have the bungalow, 1-story bungalow in the front, and you have what they call a humpback in the back, a 2-story thing that's attached. So again, keep an eye for that. Keep an eye for, remodeled, updated, restored when you are looking in the Heights, because all of that makes a huge difference in pricing. And, if you are buying a house in Woodland Heights, you will be paying way more for that bungalow than if that bungalow is on the other side, say, of Durham, So it's not a huge area, but each separate subdivision within it carries its own premium. So a good realtor can help you with all that. This is it for our segment on the Heights, art, food, and real estate. Thank you so much for being with us, and please join us again for the next zip code. Au revoir.